Zagreb nil, Celtic nil in the Champions League. It's not what we predicted. We predicted a 2-1 nervy victory for Celtic, but they couldn't get it over the line, and neither could Zagreb. We knew their fixtures coming up against AC Milan and the Almighty Arsenal. It would be difficult for those teams, but nonetheless, let's talk about this game of football. As for the starting 11, well, it pretty much referred it back to what most of us thought Celtic would do. I look at the starting 11 and I don't really see what else you really could have done in this game of football from a Brendan Rodgers point of view. It's always going to be a question now in the midfield when you've got like 5 or 6 guys that can literally legitimately make a case to start. But he went with Bernardo, he went with McGregor, and he went with Atati. Greg Taylor, though, let's talk about him. He's in, and he picks up a booking on the 6th minute. Similarities between this booking and the booking that when he stopped saying booking, but that Arnie Engels picked up against Hibs at the weekend. I think this one's not as bad. And European referees, we know they're not afraid to send guys off. Brown envelopes and all that good stuff. Or banter here, troops. But yeah, for me, I think it was a yellow, to be honest, this one. But Greg Taylor picks up the yellow. Then we move in to the game a wee bit. Celtic, they're threatening a wee bit. Celtic then get a free kick. Bernardo whips it just wide. I say just wide. I guess it could have been a wee bit better. Celtic are then passing around the back. Kuhn picks it up after a Dynamo attack. He cuts back. He tries to play it out. He plays it to a guy, but then Celtic are playing it in pretty close quarters here. Schmeichel puts it in for a throw, and this leads to a corner, but not much really comes from it. Honestly, that's pretty much your first half, man. Not a lot happening in it. Dynamo, they were literally showing at half time this chance where the ball fell to the Dynamo guy. I believe it was Spikic. It falls to him on the half volley and he hits it. The net's left and the corner flag's right. He hits it into the ground and it just rolls out at like 1 mile an hour, goes to the right. So not all that exciting. But at the beginning of the second half, we see Anthony Ralston on for Johnston. And I think at this point, maybe a few Celtic fans' heads would have dropped, folks. But Nicholas Kuhn, he goes on a bit of a solo run after this. He shoots. It's well blocked, but you know what? I think it was almost two teams that cancelled each other out the night. I feel like both are better on the counter here in Europe, but obviously Zagreb are a defensive-minded team anyway, and they're at home, so it was always going to be a tough one. This Celtic, this was never. We see teams like Bayern Munich and Barca come to Zagreb and struggle. And the stats back that up. 11 shots to Zagreb, 7 to Celtic. Celtic had 1 on target, while Zagreb had 2 on target, with a lot of possession in there for Celtic. 68.6% possession of the ball. A few other chances go amiss. Zagreb, there was a pretty decent save for Kasper Schmeichel from a header, and also a shot for the edge of the box. And then that takes us into some more substitutions. So at this point, Arnie Engels and Luke McCowan come on, and that's just 2 very good options that you've got in midfield to bring on there in the 65th minute to change things up. Thought McCowan and Engels, they made a decent impact, but nothing really major in that regard. We then saw about 6-7 minutes later, Adair and James Forrest make their way on to the park. Didn't really do much of an impact, and then only 3 minutes added on, and the game kind of just petered out. Troops, there's not really a lot to say about it. It wasn't that exciting. I feel like compared to Celtic's previous games, it was a bit flat. Not that the Club Brugge game was particularly exciting, but if you want an insider of what Son of Scotland 90 thinks on the game, and I quote, Celtic could be out, I'm not sure 10 will be enough. Hence why we look at the league table here. Celtic, of course, sit on 6 games played. They sit in 17th spot, right? Now that draw for Zagreb's just as poor. I think it's even worse for Zagreb because they knew they had AC Milan and Arsenal later down the line. And that they're going to need to pick up results against one of those two now, and it's probably going to need to be a win. Celtic, though, on the flip side of it, there is what? There is 4 teams, PSG, Shakhtar Donetsk, Stuttgart and Sparta Prague, who sit on 4 points. I mean, there's a lot of teams between Celtic and the drop, right? And there's also quite a lot of points. But when you break it down and look at it, not much hope's going into the Villa game. Even though I think Celtic got a good chance against Villa. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that there's no chance there, right? But I know it is a tough game. But all the eggs are on this young boys basket, and the problem with that is 10 points might not be enough, but you'll know after tonight and tomorrow. If the teams that are like, 38, well, I mean, Girona get beat by Liverpool, but Storm Graz, Sparta Prague, Stuttgart, Donetsk, PSG, Madrid, Bruges, Feyenoord, Zagreb, Juventus, PSV, City, etc., etc. We will know after tonight what those teams are going to be doing in that regard, and see like how many points they're on, because if Celtic are still sitting on 9 and there's a team on 25th still on 24 points and it's 5 points, it's going to take something drastic to flip it around. But if after tonight all those teams win, it could be really difficult. I mean, for example, you get Shakhtar Donetsk currently leading Bayern Munich, and they sit 26th, which is obviously a shock. And considering they're taking on Bayern Munich, you would expect that then Shakhtar Donetsk in their final 2 games would have 2 easier games. But it's all if buts, maybes at the end of the day. Again, I think if you look at this result in isolation, a 0-0 draw in a tough away place is good, it's decent. But there was a big injury crisis at Zagreb. But when you look at this big, massive league table, it's almost a game at the start of this campaign that Celtic fans would have feared that they would have needed to win to go through. Now, they've saved themselves in the regard of, well, they've actually picked up results like away in Atlanta, and they've beat Leipzig at home that they might not necessarily have expected to get over the line. But they've done it. They've done it nonetheless. And Celtic will be looking forward now to January in order to get the job done and get it officially over the line. I still think Celtic will go through, but, young boys, I've no idea who young boys are even playing. Young boys have obviously lost every game. Who are young boys playing them more at? Everyone just used young boys. They'll get back. Yeah, Stuttgart against young boys. So Stuttgart were one of the teams there that I mentioned that were on 4 points. Same with Sparta Prague and I think Feyenoord. So here, I think the good thing about this Champions League format is the fact that you don't really know what's going on until the later rounds. And even now, as some games in match day 6 have finished, and I say some games, right, 2 games, but we don't really know the outlook of the group, and I think that's a positive side. I feel like too many times in the past with the old format, you were looking at it and thinking, after 2-3 games here, you can quite clearly see that the top 2 are going through and the bottom two are not. So I welcome that. As for the game of football, it wasn't exactly brilliant, but yeah, 0-0, it's not the worst result. Celtic move on, and Fug Football moves on. Check out all the other videos later, and peace.